UFC 257, Poirier versus McGregor 2 starts tonight, so I thought I'd give my last minute in-detail predictions on how I think the fight's going to go, because I've been listening to the media recently, and all I keep hearing from these MMA experts is that if this happens, then this is going to happen, and if this happens, then this is going to happen. Thank you for telling us the obvious, you experts. Like, if Conor McGregor lands the KO punch, then he might KO Dustin Poirier, and if Conor McGregor gasses out completely in the later rounds and Dustin doesn't, then maybe Dustin would win those later rounds. It doesn't help us whatsoever, so I'm going to stick my neck out on the line and give you my very finely detailed predictions on how the fights are going to go this tonight. Not this weekend, it's tonight, and I can feel it in the air. The buzz is around me right now. I'm very confident in my predictions. I'm going to start with the early prelims, end with the main card, giving a little detailed description on how the fight goes, because I've noticed in my other prediction videos that I always go into the records and the stats that they have and how they usually tend to fight, and not really the fight itself, so I thought I'd dive into detail. I'll give you an example right now of how I'm going to break this down. AlBazi is going to go out there, and I think he's going to win the first 2 rounds against Zhalgas on the early prelims. A great matchup. Zhalgas, I feel like he's slowing down a little bit recently, but enough of that. I think he's going to be failing takedowns in the early rounds, and AlBazi is going to get position from those takedowns shot on him. I think he's got great submission game. I think he's going to find the back of Zhalgas early in those first 2 rounds and just have the power difference on the feet. So I see Zhalgas going out there, throwing a lot of volume in the early rounds, getting outlanded by a countering AlBazi, and whenever Zhalgas backs up AlBazi close enough to the cage, he's going to shoot a little bit of a sloppy takedown under the shots of AlBazi, but AlBazi will manage to find positional control in those scrambles, finding himself the back in those first 2 rounds, and even reversing a couple of takedowns and ending up on top after it's said and done. I think AlBazi will end up winning that fight in the first 2 rounds, 29-28 against Zhalgas. Moving on, Nick Lentz, let's speed this up. Movsar Evoluev. I see Nick Lentz cruising forward the entire time into shots from Movsar Evoluev. I don't see Movsar Evoluev landing with power enough to KO Nick Lentz in the featherweight division. It is at catchweight, however, but they're both still featherweight sized as they were. Nick Lentz's last bout was at featherweight. Same with Movsar Evoluev, of course, he is a featherweight. I think he's going to be landing a bunch of shots on an engaging Nick Lentz the entire time. Nick Lentz will be walking into jabs and straight right hands the entire time. Nothing's going to drop him. Nothing's going to rock him. But I think he's going to be shooting failed takedowns. That's going to lead to him getting gassed out. And over the distance of the fight, Movsar Evoluev will start to land more and more, eventually winning 30-27 via unanimous decision against Nick Lentz, walking into damage the entire time. Moving on to the prelims. Khalil Roundtree Jr. versus Marcin Prachnio. Marcin Prachnio has his hands up very high. I think Khalil Roundtree Jr. is going to earn his respect with leg kicks the entire time, chewing up those legs in the early rounds. Prachnio is going to shoot some takedowns, but I believe in the strength of Khalil Roundtree to keep him off of those takedowns, and then Marcin Prachnio is going to start failing some of those takedowns and slowing down in the fight, and that's going to open up a body kick TKO for Khalil Roundtree to go out there, get the job done nice and early. At the end of the first round, I feel like is when it's going to happen. Marcin Prachnio is going to be wading forward, failing shots, eating leg kicks, start to slow down his movement. Eventually, he's going to be so worried about those leg kicks, he's going to eat a nice tight switch kick to the body, which is going to drop him, and Khalil Roundtree is going to follow up with ground and pound shots for the TKO finish at the end of the first round. Moving on, Juliana Pena versus Sarah McMahon. Sarah McMahon's going to go out there. This is a much funner way of doing predictions, I'll tell you. Sarah McMahon's going to go out there, take down Juliana Pena in the midway point of each round after a bit of lackluster striking between the pair of them, where no one's really winning the exchanges. Sarah McMahon is going to make the difference at the end of those rounds after she's sweated out Juliana Pena a little bit against the cage in some clinch situations. I think she'll wait until they're a little bit more sweaty, they're a little bit more messy into the fight and a little bit more tired, and then in the middle of those rounds, Sarah McMahon is going to go out there, get the takedown, and make sure to immediately pass into half guard, which is where she does a lot of her best work. She held her last opponent down in half guard the entire time, but I think she's going to do that in this bout as well, which is very hard to score submissions from when you're on your back. Half guard gives you a lot of options to get out of things and get into safer shot, and I think she's going to land a lot of safe shots from half guard to the body, to the head, a lot of total strikes. They won't get stood up the entire time, but it'll be a bit of a snooze fest, and I think Sarah McMahon will hold down Juliana Pena the entire second half of every round, landing total strikes, winning herself a 30-27 unanimous decision. Moving on, Brad Tavares versus Antonio Carlos Jr. I believe Antonio Carlos Jr. is going to go out there, throwing a lot of volume and coming forward quite a bit in the fight, and Brad Tavares is going to take some time to find his range for the counter shots, but as as the rounds go on, Brad Tavares will start landing bigger and better counter shots against Antonio Carlos Jr., finding the body in the clinch as well. I believe Antonio Carlos Jr. might secure himself the first round of this bout by holding Brad Tavares against a cage and using that clinch pressure there, but Tavares will invest in the clinch exchanges with knees to the body and punches to the body as well, and eventually find his range on the feet and start catching Antonio Carlos Jr. coming in forwards. And as the rounds go on, Antonio Carlos Jr., who is known for slowing down, will start to slow down due to all of the clinch work of Brad Tavares in the earlier rounds. Tavares will secure the second round, and then in the third round, Antonio Carlos Jr. is going to come wading forward, more tired than usual in the early parts of the rounds, and then he's going to come in with his hands down, and Tavares will catch him with a big shot over the top in the third round as Antonio Carlos Jr. is trying to pressure forward while he's somewhat gassing out. Tavares will find the counter shot in the third and put him down. Arman Tsarukyan versus Matt Frevola is also on the prelims. I believe that Arman Tsarukyan is going to outland Matt Frevola the entire fight long. I think Matt Frevola is going to shoot takedown attempts on Arman Tsarukyan, but much like Amir AlBazi versus Zhalgas Magulov, at the end of these rounds, Frevola is going to be shooting on Arman Tsarukyan after Tsarukyan outlands him in the early parts, and Matt Frevola is going to want to steal the round back with 2 minutes to go at the end of each round, trying to get things to the ground, but Arman Tsarukyan will scoop him up, use that little reversal where you hook the leg as a guy's trying to take you down against the cage, and find his way on top at the end of those rounds, landing ground and pound shots and securing a dominant position at the end of the rounds off of failed takedown attempts by Matt Frevola, because I love Arman Tsarukyan's grappling, and I think he'll outland Matt Frevola on the feet as well. Frevola might land a bunch of big shots that might look like he's still dangerous, and it will be a competitive bout, I'm sure, but Arman will land too many, and I think he'll start getting to the stages in the fight where he's starting to double Matt Frevola on significant strikes and win the positional exchanges as well. 29-28, maybe Frevola steals a first. No, I'm not doing maybes. 30-27 Arman Tsarukyan, he wins every round. Moving on up the card, main card. Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Ribas. Great one here. I believe that it's an amazing fight. It's a really amazing fight. I think it's going to be a fun scrap on the feet, which is not something that you usually see, but the women's strawweight division is one of the best. It is the best women's division in the UFC right now, jam-packed with talent. I think Amanda Ribas is going to go out there and score Marina Rodriguez on the feet for 3 rounds. Rodriguez will be slower, she'll be less technical, and Ribas will find 1-2s down the pipe and some leg kicks mixed in between against Marina Rodriguez. For 3 rounds straight, I can see Ribas shooting some takedowns at the end of each round, but I think Rodriguez has the takedown defense needed to keep this standing. But that's going to be a very bad thing for her. I think Ribas is way more improved over the past few years, and Marina Rodriguez seems to be slowing down. Ribas will go out there and be too fast on the feet, landing 1-2 combinations. Won't finish Marina Rodriguez, probably won't even hurt her, but will scoot around and land big shots for all 3 rounds. And I think eventually in the third, it will start to get a little bit dangerous for Marina, and we could see a 10-8 round in the third here for Ribas, because she does push a good pace, but I think she'll just end up getting another 10-9 in the third, but a little bit more dominant in the first 2 rounds, which are going to be pretty competitive, but Ribas will win the fight 30-27. Moving on, Andrew Sanchez versus Magomedsharipov. I'm going to go with a decision again here. I don't see many finishes because there's a bunch of competitive fights, and the favourites in these bouts, such as Muradov, aren't really known for their explosive first-round KO power. Muradov has been to a decision before. I think he'll go to a decision here against Andrew Sanchez, who is always tough and showed that against Vettori. But more about the fight itself, I think Andrew Sanchez is going to be looking to feint his way in, and during that time, he seems to have been a little bit more boxing-oriented. I think Muradov's going to be chopping at his legs early in the fight, barely squeaking out the first round against Andrew Sanchez, who's going to be quite pressuring in the early rounds, and he's going to be throwing his signature front kick quite a bit in the bout, and a lot of leg kicks too, but I think he's going to get out leg kicked by Muradov, but Sanchez is going to start to resort to his boxing once losing the kicking exchanges as the fight goes on. That will then favour Muradov even more, and he will start to really piece up Andrew Sanchez. I see this being a 30-26 unanimous decision to Muradov, where Ribas can't against Rodriguez. I think Muradov will get a 10-8 round in the third. Sanchez covers up quite a bit in the third round, and Muradov starts to tee off. Mixes in shots to the body, which starts to lower the hands of Sanchez, then starts going upstairs and mixing things together very beautifully in the third round, earning himself a 10-8 and a 30-26 unanimous decision. Moving on, Jessica Eye versus Joanne Calderwood. Good one again. I think Jessica Eye is not going to score any takedowns. She doesn't really shoot for takedowns. She hasn't done in her last 4 fights, but more about the fight itself. I think Eye is going to go out there and look to box with Joanne Caldwell and get out leg kicked in the early parts of the rounds. Try and secure takedowns at the end, but I don't think it's going to be enough to win her the round. I don't think she's going to even score any takedowns, but she might end up in some good positions where she's just sort of holding Joanne Caldwell against the cage, but there won't be any official takedowns scored or any top control scored, in my opinion. Maybe some control time in the clinch after some failed takedowns, but Caldwell will land more significant strikes over the 3 rounds, earning herself a 29-28 unanimous decision. I think Jessica Eye is going to sneak around of this, but Caldwell's investments early to the legs and the body of Jessica Eye is going to come a favour in the 2nd and 3rd round, and she'll win herself those rounds. And I'll predict this as well. Jessica Eye is going to be crying at the end, thinking that she won, and it's not going to be a close fight, and it's going to be very clearly Joanne Caldwell in the second 2 rounds, but Eye is going to make it seem like she's been robbed and make it feel like she's won the fight. I can just see it already coming together very well. I think Eye is going to complain at the end about it being a bit of a weird decision, and Joanne Caldwell's going to win clearly. Moving on, Dan Hooker versus Michael Chandler. I think Chandler's going to go out there, score some takedowns early, but Dan Hooker will find his way back up and find himself to the cage and use that to get himself back up in some certain situations, because I feel like Dan Hooker oftentimes is waiting for the power of his opponents and tends to lean back quite a bit with his shots. I think Chandler's going to fake some big shots, go underneath with some takedowns. Dan Hooker's going to eventually get back up, and Chandler's going to have used a little bit of energy. We're going to take that awkwardness out of the early part of the fight, and also in the early part of the fight, while Chandler is looking for his engage, Dan Hooker will land a lot of calf kicks. In my opinion, he'll chew up the legs of Michael Chandler early and start throwing that front kick to the body as well, landing his jab as he moves backwards as Chandler comes in. Chandler will whiff a bunch of big shots in the early part of the round, and I think he's going to shoot some takedowns after whiffing those big shots, leading to takedowns on Dan Hooker, but no control time. Eventually, Dan Hooker's going to get back up, and after outlanding Chandler on the feet, Chandler's going to want to go out there and make a big establish a big lead at the end of the 1st round after a competitive fight where he gets some takedowns, but Hooker's outlanded him on the feet. I think Chandler will look to make a statement at the end of the round by going for another takedown. This time, Dan Hooker will see it coming, and he will have found his range for his knee. I think Dan Hooker TKOs Michael Chandler viciously with a knee up the middle at the end of the 1st round badly, and then follow-up shots afterwards will earn him a 1st round TKO. Against Michael Chandler, Dan Hooker gets the win. Moving on, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. The big one. The one we've all been waiting for here. You know my prediction of McGregor by 1st round TKO, but here's how I see the fight going. I think Dustin Poirier's going to go out there, and I think he's going to be twitching his head and flicking at his shorts the entire time, and I think when he starts doing that, Conor McGregor's going to land big shots on Dustin Poirier's face. I think McGregor is going to start out this fight by chewing at the leg of Poirier early. I think he's going to land 2 hard leg kicks on Poirier, then start mixing in some feints, and then go upstairs, land some big shots, and it's going to knock Poirier backwards, and it was going to be a very visible display of power in that 1st round, and Dustin Poirier will turn into a different fighter. McGregor will take the lead in the octagon within the first 20 seconds of the bout. I think he will establish a pressure and have Dustin Poirier moving backwards, and I think that will turn Poirier into a different fighter who's more defensive, who's looking for counter shots of his own. McGregor will fake and engage. Poirier will try and throw back, and that's when McGregor will tag him in the exchanges, sending him around the octagon with these shots, making it seem like Poirier is not as aggressive as he usually is in the early rounds, moving backwards the entire time. McGregor will land a lot of shots. Poirier will start throwing some big shots back, and maybe he'll land a couple of big times on McGregor. But out of the exchanges, McGregor will visibly have more damage on his shots than Poirier will, and I think McGregor will rock Poirier a bunch of times in the early rounds, not drop him, and then eventually Poirier at the end of that round, same thing with Michael Chandler and Dan Hooker, is going to try and win it back for himself by being finally the guy to engage in the bout, because I think Poirier is going to be very patient and wait for McGregor to come for him early, and I think McGregor's going to lure him in by faking, and then Poirier will counter, and then McGregor will go. And at the end of the round, Poirier will finally be the one to go first to try and get some big establishing point at the end of the round, and I think that's when McGregor will be waiting for him and find that left hand right over the top of a Dustin Poirier right hand and sleep him around the ear area as it was last time, but this time way clearer on the side of the head like McGregor did against Alvarez, and he'll put down Poirier in the 1st round and follow up with TKO ground and pound. That's what will happen in every single single fight tonight. Let me know if you want me to do this in more videos. I know in my prediction videos, I sort of go into, well, this is the stats, and this is the previous opponents, and this is what we saw in this fight, and that's why I give it a 60% chance. I'm sick of analysts in the media not giving their fucking prediction and being a fence sitter the entire time. It's about time someone had some balls. Those are all my predictions. Detailed, start to finish, very confident with them. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Goodbye. I'll see you later. Thank you for watching.